I hope you folks go ahead and enjoy your dessert. We're going to continue with the program. Now, when I typically introduce this speaker over the last few years, I've always said he is the 1986 winner of the Indianapolis 500. But after what's happened this year, he is better being known around the country as Graham Rahall's dad. Rightfully so. Please welcome the chairman of the International Motor Racing Research Center's Governing Council, and yes, the Indy 500 winner, legendary car owner, Bobby Rahal.
Well, thank you. It's great being here tonight with all of you in our second annual event honoring this year Richard Petty. I have to tell you, I told Judy Stropus, our kind of director of communications, I said, I just want to come up here and say a few things, and I want to, if I can, before I go into explaining my role with the IMRRC. I never really had a lot of time to get to know Richard Petty, very rarely ran into him. But there were two instances that really stand out in my life. Many of you may not know, but in 1984, I actually had the privilege of driving for the Woods Brothers at Riverside. And I remember I was excited. You know, the Woods Brothers were a legendary family. Great people, Leonard, Glenn, Eddie, Vic, Bernice, the whole lot. And I get to Riverside and get in the car, and I go out and do a lap. And I had driven to Riverside in Can-Am cars maybe a year or two earlier, and you go into turn 9, last turn at Riverside, and you barely touch the brakes. You know, almost flat out. And 935 twin turbo Porsches, you go in between the kink leading into turn 9 to turn 9, go about halfway down and touch the brakes and slow down a bit and then accelerate through. So I got in the Thunderbird, and 7-Eleven was the sponsor. They were my sponsor in IndyCar at the time. And I thought, well, I'll take it easy. I'll just brake just past the kink. So I go in there on the first really flying lap, and next thing you know, I'm going in there, and I mean, this thing won't stop. And I had the brake pedal up against the firewall, and I'm jamming it in gear, and the rear end's hopping, and if I could open the door and put my foot out, I would have. And I somehow survive. I don't hit the wall. And of course, my first mistake was I pulled in the pit lane. You know, in IndyCar racing, you're cruising the pit lane. In NASCAR, they're all in the garage. So I go into the pit lane, there's nobody there. So embarrassingly, I have to take another slow lap around, and I come in, and I said, Jesus. I said, you know, there's no brakes on this thing. And, you know, I said, oh, no, that's what we use. I said, if you guys put, like, brakes off a Trans Am car, you'd kill everybody here. I mean, because you can't use the brakes. This is a long race. I think it was 300 miles or 250 miles. And I said, well, you know, Richard tried them brakes, but he reckoned it was too much brake for the car. And of course, they meant the king. And I had never heard that there was too much brake for a car in my life, especially one that weighed 3,700 pounds. But then, what do I know? Richard won a lot more stock car races than I ever did, so, you know, I quickly shut up. Later that week, we were in the driver's meeting, and Richard's next to me. Richard wasn't driving, he was just kind of hanging out. As we were in the Bell Helmets thing, had a little hospitality unit there, and the little building was hot, so you go in there and hang out. And he's sitting there, and I'm sitting there, and we were the only two in the room, and kind of looks up, he goes, you're the boy that drives in Indy cars, ain't you? I said, yes, sir. And he said, you must want money awful bad. Richard, I'm sure doesn't remember that. But that was my last impression of Richard Petty. No, not seriously. My last impression of Richard Petty is that this guy, as Chip said, this guy was the king. He was NASCAR, is NASCAR. And, you know, over the years, I mean, why I'm here at the IMRRC is I grew up in a racing family. My father wasn't famous. He didn't race for a living. He raced out of a passion for fun. As a kid in the 60s, I grew up around it. And of course, every race you could see on TV, and there weren't that many in those days, unfortunately. Mainly it was radio. You know, you listen to it. It didn't matter what race, whether it was an IndyCar race, sports car race, stock car race. and Richard Petty was the man. And that appreciation of history is really what brought me here to the IMRRC. Because as the guys in our council know, and many people who know me well, is I am a student of the history of motor racing. Because I think that the history of motor racing is what makes motor racing legitimate today, like any sport. You know, Chip mentioned Babe Ruth. You know, it's Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio. It's those guys that make the New York Yankees today. And in racing, it's guys like Richard Petty, or Mario Andretti, or an A.J. Foyt, or God knows, Harley Jones, so many others that make, especially my part of the sport, so relevant. And so when I was asked to come in and be on the board of the IMRRC, it just made a lot of sense for me. And I do hope, JC said earlier, that if you have the opportunity, come down and see what we're all about, because we are the repository, probably one of the world's largest, if not the largest repository of the archives of motor racing, not just American motor racing, but international motor racing in the world. People come from around the world to write books, looking for reference materials or what have you, or write articles for magazines or what have you. And it really is truly a special place, and we're committed to making it better and better. So whether you come there just because you're a fan, or you come there because you're writing a book, or an article, or whatever the case may be, or you want to show your children or loved ones, you know, the history of the sport, the IMRRC is the place to go. So we're really thrilled to be here to host this dinner tonight for all of you. You know, we had a great honoree last year, my friend Chip. Of course, Richard, I don't know what we're going to do next year, Richard. Can you come back again next year? Can we honor you again? Is there a limit on that? I don't know. But truly, I know you're at a special place. Watkins Glen. My first race here was in 1974 in the preliminary race to the U.S. Grand Prix. For some of you remember that, that's the year they burned the bus down in the bog. You know, one of those things in motor racing that stands out for some odd reason. Kind of makes Watkins. I think you guys are actually, Mike, you're reenacting the burning this year. I mean, yeah. They can't get Greyhound to buy into that yet. But in any event, this is one of the crown jewels of American racing circuits. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're a part of tonight. Thank you. And for those of you who have a chance to stop by, give us your support, because what we're doing, it doesn't matter what part of the sport you're in, we're the place to go for the history of it. Thank you.
Bobby, thank you so much, and for all your leadership as chairman of the governing council of the International Motor Racing Research Center. We talked about how motorsports today wouldn't be where it is without incredible history. Well, there's no track that can wake up the echoes of some of the all-time legends in motorsports better than Watkins Glen. Think of the names of the drivers over the years that have raced here at Watkins Glen, in Formula One and Oklahoma Racing, the legends of NASCAR, and again, the greatest drivers in the world this weekend in NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. Now, coming up next is a speaker who will talk about Watkins Glen. He will talk about International Speedway Corporation. He represents NASCAR, and he does a fabulous job leading the way for Watkins Glen. Please welcome the president of Watkins Glen International, Mike Trento.
Well, that's a great introduction. Thank you very much. It's very humbling to be up here today doing what we're going to do for the King. When John Saunders and Mike Elton, we were talking about who's going to do this tonight, it was like, this is going to be pretty neat. And I have a similar story to Dr. Jerry Planks, but I didn't go to China. But I did have a picture. I showed my sons down in their little boys' cave where all the video games are and everything else. And I showed them a picture of the 43 car and told them I was christened to do the speech for a special dinner honoring the 43 car. And they said, you get to honor Kyle? And Kyle and Patty, when I was in New York City, I remember having dinner with Kyle and Patty at the banquet there. And then when I was based in Staten Island, we were trying to build that racetrack there. Kyle and Patty, we sat there in the Waldorf just having breakfast, and I remember just saying, "You're cool, Kyle? I feel like you hang with your dad," you know. But I'm very honored to be associated with this sport. It is bar none the best. It's bar none the best to be associated with Watkins International in all our history. It's really, really neat, and I get really caught up in it when we're doing things like this. In the honor of the king, wow, I just can't believe it. I gotta get a hat and a pair of glasses like that. But I'm not gonna speak that long because I have a little video that kind of encompasses your career. No, it's only 2 hours long. It's 2 minutes. And it was a very hard 2 minutes to work with. We worked with NASCAR Productions, putting it together. And let's just call it a little outtakes of the king. And that was probably the best way that I could speak about how great he is to our sport, what he's done for us as a leader, as a representative, and what he represents not only in Watkins International, it is to the sport. And what I think of Watkins Glen, what I think of the king and how he's represented us. So if you would just kick off this great video, I would greatly appreciate that.
As we look at the green flag, the King's hat blew off as the parade came by, and that was in the city, actually, on the front stretch here, right before you get to the third one. Now watch the hat come off the King here. Whoa! We're talking about winning the pole for the Coca-Cola 600 and what it means to you, and also the organization to win your first career pole. Yeah, I guess it's the first time we've ever won a pole with it.
Hey, it's my turn. He said wait.
Sorry, Eric, we had to throw it.
Oh yeah, you like that kind of?
Yeah, I like it. So.
Sim race?
Yeah, I have a couple times. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
See, this takes place, the dog have to wait and go to a place called Daytona.
Yeah, I've been there a couple times.
Oh, you see it?
It's all sports, right?
Good old Southern boys like Richard Petty, the king of the Sockers, who has updated his image this season with a brand new Fu Manchu mustache.
Why I came up with the Fu Manchu? I don't know what that was all about. Talk about some moments.
Moment of who? President of the United States. Well, I was going to run for 43rd president, but George beat me to it, so I decided to go. And 44, Richard Petty would go yet.
Richard, I can't tell you how many miles of footage we went through, and we had to be very selective on what we put, because there was some better stuff, but we wanted to make sure we were publicly acceptable on some of those things. Again, 200 wins, just a legend. Thank you for doing this. I also sit on the board, and I'll echo Bobby's comments of come and see what we have to offer in the Research Center. It is bar none the world's best. And we wish you obviously all the best, and thank you, Kyle. Great, obviously knowing you. And again, I just want to put that in perspective. My kids are only 17 and 11 when I talked about the 43 car, so they didn't understand that Kyle had a dad at that point, so they're in a different realm. But they know the 43, the whole team is great. I had to bring this up because love Marcos and what you've done. Eric and AJ, what you did last year. Eric, we just got a great team, and I know you guys are going to rock and roll this weekend, so we look forward to it, and thank you very much, Ken.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now we're going to bring up some folks and have some fun. I'm going to tell a few stories, and I'm not sure what you're going to hear, but I think you'll enjoy it. I feel sure you will. Richard Petty Motorsports has 2 drivers who will be competing this weekend, and so we're going to bring both these guys up now. The driver of the Smithfield Ford, Eric Almirola, will come up, and the driver of the Medallion Bag Ford, Sam Hornis, will come up. And joining these two on the stage, you heard his name mentioned earlier, he is likewise a Hall of Famer in the NASCAR Hall of Fame because he has won 7 titles, Richard Petty, and 1 more with Terry Labonte. He's an 8-time NASCAR champion. Crew Chief Dale Linda. Dale, come on up. Well, as you guys sit down, we want to chat a little bit here. While Dale's coming up, we'll start with Sam. Sam, you've had a lot of success in your career. For people who may not know, Sam came from Oklahoma Racing and won 3 IndyCar titles, won the 2006 Indy 500, came to NASCAR, wanted to come to NASCAR. In fact, when he was still winning IndyCar races and IndyCar championships, I was up doing the Indy 500, and we had dinner one night, and I sat with Sam at one of the Penske functions, and Sam, his lovely wife, talked to me about NASCAR the whole time. While we talked about NASCAR and about how much he wanted to be a part of this, and now you are here. Sam, you've driven for a lot of people and some very special people. We mentioned Roger. What does it mean for you to be able to drive a car for the King, Richard Petty?
When I started out racing, it was just a pastime, and at some point in time, I hope to be able to have the opportunity to go to the Indianapolis 500. But as a kid, all the different racing that I watched on TV, I was infatuated with it, whatever I could watch. So. Got to see a lot of Richard Petty when I was watching NASCAR. To think about the fact that I got to work for Roger Penske for almost a decade, and a lot of people, when they refer to Roger, when they work for him, it's RP. So then when I came over here, everybody's like, well, RP said this. I'm like, you guys talking to Penske? But I'm like, that's the King, but it's just a difference in being able to talk about it. And I feel it's a great honor to be able to drive for somebody like the King, like Richard Petty. It's also a great honor to have the same birthday as the King. So we're both born on July 2nd, so I feel like that's an honor. I don't know if there's I know that for sure there's no other birthdays that have a 7-time Daytona 500 winner and a 1-time Indy 500 winner. So I feel very fortunate to not only to drive for him, but to get to know him and my appreciation of racing and to see how people react when the King's around. And we went to the Supercross race earlier this year in Atlanta, and we were walking around the Superdome there, and he goes, the first thing that they had here was my retirement party. I'm like, this is like 50,000 people here? And, yeah, exactly. And we were walking around, we come out in an elevator, and people are just stopping exactly anything that they're doing at that point in time. You see that's Richard Petty, and they're whispering to each other and following around, and it's just, sometimes I think you have to be pretty hard to go anywhere. But it's definitely an honor.
Well said, Sam. There. Sam Warnes, ladies and gentlemen. Eric, we were talking earlier, you were 8 years old when Richard Petty retired in 1992, so you were growing up in Florida, so you had to go back and look at some of those races, some of those wins. But one of the favorite things I hear over and over again on the NASCAR commercials now that are so well done is you in Victory Lane at Daytona last July when you say, I took the 43 car to Victory Lane at Daytona. What did that mean? Tell us about that day again. Richard coming to visit.
Yeah, it was special. It was 30 years to the date that Richard actually won his 200th win, but it was really special for me on a lot of levels. Just the fact to get the 43 car back to Victory Lane, that was very special in its own right. But for me to grow up in Tampa, Florida, which is 2 hours away from Daytona, and as a young kid, my grandfather and my dad would always take me over to Daytona and we'd watch the Daytona 500 in the grandstands. We used to take summer vacations when I was out of school, and we'd go to Disney World for a couple days, and then we'd drive over and watch the July race at Daytona, and then drive back to Tampa. So I have a lot of really fond memories of Daytona, and just all the history about the racetrack. And obviously, you can't think about Daytona and the Daytona 500 without thinking about the King and his 7 wins there, and all his wins in July. And what is it, 11 wins he's got there total, or something like that? Something crazy. How many, huh? 10. So I was giving him credit for the one I got in July. So. But yeah, it was really special. It was a huge honor, and when I signed up at Richard Petty Motorsports in 2012, I badly wanted to be the guy that brought that 43 car back to victory lane. It had been too many years to see that car up on top of the scoring pylon, and I wanted to be that guy. I took on that challenge, and we were able to accomplish that at Daytona. And I tell everybody, I got one down, I got 199 to go. So we'll see. But I'm excited about our future at Richard Petty Motorsports, and obviously with having Smithfield with all they do backing us and in our corner, I feel like we got a lot of potential left ahead of us.
Every time we're Dale Lehman, I had a chance to do a lot of races with Dale Lehman on the pit box. Before there was a pit box, actually, we were standing on pit road, and was just marveled at how at the decisions he made and the things he did that just seemed to be like he could finish Richard Petty's sentences at time. And I remember 1981, with 25 laps to go in the Daytona 500, and back then this didn't happen. You just didn't do this. And Dale Lehman calls Richard Petty down pit road for gas only. And you just didn't make those stops like that back then. You needed to put tires on. He comes in, gas only, and Richard Petty goes out with 25 laps to go and beats Bobby Allison to win his 7th Daytona 500. So Dale, let me ask you this. Talk about working with the King, and what impressed you most about what he did inside the car?
Inside the car? Oh, he was great with the car, but we all know those records and everything that, and maybe I'm hitting on something I shouldn't, but he's meant so much to the Randleman community, the level cross community. If anybody got in trouble in that area, they came to Richard for help. The churches, the bands, the football coaches and everything for all that. But I don't know, we grew up together getting back to racing, and back then he had to be 21 before you could run in NASCAR. So July the 2nd, 1958, he turned 21. July the 12th, we went to Columbia, South Carolina. Me and him and Red Miller. Miss Betty, Lee, and Maurice went somewhere in Asheville and raced on the same night, and it's been on ever since. It's been a long ride. And of course, you know all the records and everything, and in public they get me out and say I would have won 400 races if it hadn't been for you, and I can't prove him wrong.
Dale, what is it a lot of people in this day and age don't understand how good Richard was behind the wheel? What do you think, what part of his ability do you think goes unappreciated or underappreciated in terms of what he did, winning at all different kinds of racetracks, including 27 victories in 1967 all over the country? What was it about him that made him so good?
Helping Dale get the setup perfect.
We get to arguing with each other and everything, but he had so much determination. He just he worked too hard, and he wanted the car as good as he could get it. But then when it come time for him to work, he certainly put out, and you never had to worry about that. And I don't know, you talk about the '67 season. Golly, we won. It was 48 races, and he won 27 of them, 10 in a row. And it's a different world today, but it's still in the daggone record book, and he's got it. And it'll be there forever. But I don't know. I always told him he drove hard so he wouldn't have to work. So I don't know. And I can prove that, but no. When it come time to work and everything, he could do a little bit of that, but he didn't work if he didn't have to.
Most of the drivers who have driven for Richard over the years will tell you that he doesn't say a lot, but when he does speak, you need to listen. And so I'm going to ask these two drivers. I know that Sam's only been here, this is the first year, but I know Richard comes around and he'll poke his head in and say a few words. Give us either a piece of advice Richard has given you, or something he said to you, either getting out of the car, getting into the car, that you have remembered and taken to heart. Eric, I'll let you go first.
All right, well, I've been driving for him for 4 years now, and it drives him crazy the way these new cars race and that aerodynamics is as important as they are. And he has given me a lesson one time at his motorhome on a napkin and a Sharpie. And he drew a racetrack, and then he drew 2 boxes for race cars. And he was giving me a lesson on how to pass cars on the racetrack that I was faster than. And I was like, well, it's not that easy. If it was that easy, everybody would do it. But, it's the air, and you get dirty air, and you can't drive it as good. I don't want to hear that crap. Listen to me. And so I've listened, and I've taken it to heart, and I've really focused on, since that, I think that was the middle part of last year, and I really have taken that to heart and really tried really, really hard to not let the car in front of me hold me up. And I feel like I've passed more cars this year than I have in any of the years previous. So I listened, and it's working. And how it's not always easy to listen, because he's always right. I mean, how can a guy that's won 7 championships, 200 wins, and how could he be wrong? So I take everything he says to heart. And, sometimes it's hard to listen, but you have to listen to the king. He pays the bills.
Absolutely. And the same Sam, I know you haven't been here that long, but is this something you've heard from Richard, a few words that you've taken to heart?
I don't know that I have a good story yet about what. I haven't got too many lectures yet on. Maybe I need some more, but I'm sure I do. But one of the things that I've taken, we were actually it has nothing to do with racing, other than the fact of we were going to the racetrack, and we were in Las Vegas, and we were talking about people, just the aspect of people, and he said, I've got all these records, and the 200 wins and 7 championships and all this, and he's like, it was. I was a small part of that. He's like, it was all these people banded together to help me do that, and to take care of me, to make sure that I was where I needed to be, or that the car was the way that it needed to be, or the people were right, and really looked at it from the aspect of that all the people that helped him do those things and that were a part of it, really when you sit back and what I took out of that, I looked around at it as a lot of people took care of you, but you look at all the people, whether it's through the race team or the community or just NASCAR in general, that you helped out, or that you were able to encourage or to give some kind of a release away from their normal everyday life, whether it was being on TV or set a positive role model, things like that. So I just like to hear the different things. I really enjoy learning about racing and the sport itself, and thinking about the history that's involved in it. So just getting that opportunity, whether it's 5 minutes here or there, to be able to hear about it. And last weekend there was a guy that wrote a song for Richard, and Richard presented him with a framed picture of basically it was the song, the lyrics, and the sheet music that was put into the Petty Museum there in Level Cross. And I mean, the guy just started tearing up. I mean, he was so honored, and I think that's one of the things that is great about being at RPM. I mean, whether it's people that work at the team or if it's Richard himself, they make you feel like you're part of it, and that you've been part of it for a long time.
Well, let me finish with you and finish up this segment. And when you guys were together, you were like brothers. You were cousins, you were like brothers, and you looked after each other, you cared about each other. You worked hard to give him a car he could win races. And when he climbed out of the car, your name was among the first he mentioned for the credit for why he was able to be so successful. Richard had a long history of consecutive starts. And one year he had a wheel break in Daytona, and he hit the wall, and he pushed his right shoulder out the back. He dislocated it out the back of the car, back of his shoulder, and a horrible, horrible injury. The next week he was going to Richmond, and you were going to change the car and adjust the seat, and you came to me, and we were going to try to fix his shoulder and tape it into position. And you cocked the seat up to one side, made the shifter shorter, and then you and I went to work on the shoulder. I'll let you finish the story because that was a pretty, and you told everybody that came in questions Richard Petty, said there's no way he'll be able to run 400 laps at Richmond with a shoulder he can't move. All he can move is his wrist and part of his hand. And you told everybody he would do it. I'll let you finish.
Well, we blew the tire at Daytona and went to Richmond, and I think I'm the one that taped him up. But we taped it up where it wouldn't come back out. And I don't know how to finish that there, but I know when he stopped, he said, "You've got this thing taped pretty tight, get it cut loose." And but there's just so many stories like that, you know. We wrecked at Charlotte one time in practice, and this was before the backup cars and everything. We borrowed a car from DK Eldridge and put STP on the quarter panel and put him in it. And he said, "I owe it to the fans." And he probably wasn't able to drive then, but he did. But I've seen that, you know, the big wreck at Darlington in '70. The car laid out in the middle of the racetrack upside down. Me and Richie Bars in the car. I thought he was gone then, and we pulled the seatbelt loose, and when we dropped him, he said, "Oh," and so we know he was alive. But he was out 6 weeks in because when his shoulder come out, it took a big piece of bone with it. It had to heal up, and I think the first race back was at Michigan, and we was in the Superbird, and J.C. Elder come back and said, "Richard, are you sure you're okay to run?" And Richard said, "Yes," and I'm doing good. Moved his arm all around, took his arm, put this and but it pleased Jake, so that was okay. But there's just so many stories where, golly, we went run Nashville one Saturday night and Marysville, Tennessee, 18 hours later, you know, and it was hot weather back then too, and we packed him with ice and sent him out. And of course, he done the job for at least 200 times.
Great story. To follow up the Richard story, I was in radio and I kept going by and checking with Dale. And he said Richard never complained. He ran 400 laps at Richmond, one arm, and during the week I was with MRN at the time. We went in the garage here that morning by the day of the race, and we took regular medical tape and tried to tape it to his T-shirt, and it wouldn't hold. His arm was still moving, so we peeled the T-shirt off. And Dale asked me, I said, "Well, I know how we can get it to stay in place, but it's not going to be the prettiest thing. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we're going to use duct tape." And we used silver duct tape, 1 inch wide, and Dale and I taped that shoulder in place. And I told Dale, I said, "Now when the race is over, you've got to bring him back here, and you got to wait 30 minutes. You got to wait 30 minutes before you take this duct tape off. Sit him down, let him cool off here, and wait 30 minutes. A couple weeks later, Dale asked me, he said, "Why did you say 30 minutes? Because I knew that MRN would still be on the air, and I wanted to be long gone when they put that duct tape off the king." Ladies and gentlemen, great stories from the past and the future of Richard Petty. We also have a few other people who couldn't be here tonight, but wanted to give shout-outs to the King because he has meant so much to them growing up as young drivers and to the sport that they love so much. So take a look.
Hey Richard, just wanted to say congratulations on your award. Everybody at Surpass Racing is so proud of your legacy and what you've done for the sport, and you've really paved the way for guys like myself to make a living in the sport. And your legacy will live long time after you're gone. So thanks for everything you do, and congratulations again.
Congratulations, Richard. Your contribution to NASCAR and just motorsports in general is unmatched by anybody, and this is certainly very well deserved. Appreciate all that you've done for so many to pave the way, to make this sport better, to make it this great form of motorsports that we all love to compete in today. So thank you very much. Congrats.
Hello everyone, and congratulations to the King. There's no one more deserving of this award than you. The contributions you made to our sport, really all of auto racing, is just beyond measure. So thank you for your contributions, Richard. You're truly an icon and the King, and you have a great night.
Richard Petty's son, Kyle, began his racing career at the tender age of 19 in NASCAR after he had won a race at Daytona at the age of 18. In his 30-year career, he was following in the footsteps of his famous grandfather and his famous father. Among his many victories was the 1992 NASCAR race at Watkins Glen. Please welcome Kyle Petty.
Question and answer?
I don't understand this. He never won up here. Why are you honoring him? Seriously. Seriously. Did y'all ever see him run a road course? Ray Hall did. When Ray Hall was over here on the asphalt, the King was out here in the dirt. How'd you run the S's? Damn, tell the truth. The S is at Riverside.
He's straightened out.
He's straightened out. And I love these stories you guys are sitting here. Eric, go ahead and give him credit for that 11th win at Daytona. He took your pole with that other one. That equals it out. I love these stories. I gotta tell you. He broke his neck. Where did he break his neck at? Pocono. Broke his neck at Pocono. So he's got one of these little, ambulance chasing collars on. You know what I'm talking about? They just go up around the neck. So he bring him over to the racetrack because he's Richard Petty, he got a broke neck, he's gonna drive next week. Because that's what stock car drivers do, right? Not sporty car drivers, not Indy car drivers, stock car drivers. So they take his helmet, they drill a hole in the top of it. And they hook the cable to it. And they run it to a bar in the roof of the car. And then they run it over to the door hoop. And then they run it down into the door itself, into the bars. And they just keep putting weight on it until it gets his head up here. So that'll keep his head from going left or right. And that's gonna, as any orthopedic surgeon knows, that keeps your neck in line. So it's okay to go run Talladega with the weight and on the side of your face. Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect. I'm telling you, I don't know. Edmund could have gone forever, and y'all should have had him. Tip of the hat to Eric and Sam. I drove there 3 years, and that's all I could take, and I left. I'm kidding. I swear I'm kidding. Seriously. This is, you guys are preserving the history of what motorsports is. As Bobby said, worldwide. When you talk to Richard Petty, you're talking to a walking history of what NASCAR is. It is absolutely amazing. I had a conversation out here in the courtyard earlier. And I remember back a few years ago, went to Sharon Speedway in Ohio with Dave Bling and Kenny Strader and Tony Stewart. We went over to run some stuff, and we were telling my dad about it. And he said, hey, your grandfather won there in 51 or 52. 51 or 52. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. He said, I think it is. So he walks up in the truck and he comes back about 3 minutes later. He said, 52. I remember it's 52. Sure enough, when we got to the Speedway and looked in the record book, my grandfather had won there in 52. How he remembers this stuff absolutely baffles me. But the reason he remembers it is because he loved it. He loved it. Just as Bobby talked about the passion of driving a race car. That's why Richard Petty drove a race car. It wasn't for this honor tonight. It wasn't to
be in the Hall of Fame, it was not all of that. It was because he absolutely loved to drive a race car. He was a fan, he was a mechanic, he's been an owner, he's been a driver, he's been a champion, he's been a winner. He's encompassed what motorsports are and the best parts of motorsports. And that's what I see. You know, people always say, what's it like to have Rich Petty for a father? Greatest father in the world. That's how simple it is. I can't tell you how special it was to grow up with him, to grow up over there with Dale across the thing. I used to get off the school bus and I'd run through hear the race car run, I'd run through the front yard, over to the great race shop, drop my books and go to the race shop, because when the race car was running, that meant they were going to drive it down the highway to make sure nothing was leaking and everything was good. And there's nothing cooler when you're 9 or 10 years old to jump in an old Plymouth Roadrunner or a Superbird and drive down a county road and turn around and come back. The law didn't like it too much, but it was cool. Okay? I will say that. But he is a great person and a great human being. You can take, you take the championships, you take the races, you take the wins, you take all that. And that's all well and good. That's all well and good. But just as Dale said, when you look at the community of Level Cross and you look at the community of Randall, North Carolina, and you look at Victory Junction and what he's done for Victory Junction and for those kids. And Ben Kennedy, thank you guys for coming. Thank you so much for coming to camp. Those kids love that. But when you look at the totality of what he's done away from the racetrack, he's a bigger champion away from the racetrack than he ever was on the racetrack. It is, I have 3 wonderful sisters, and oh, this is like Ford's Theater. Swear. Damn. Woo! All right, we're gonna play that way. Now we're gonna go. But I have 3 wonderful sisters. Our mother passed away a year ago, and it has brought us all closer together. And you know, it's funny. I tell people all the time. I don't think when I walk in my father's house, then I see a home. That's our home. For my sisters, for myself, that's our home. It's not a museum. There's trophies and there's pictures and there's stuff like that. But it's our home. And that's what a father does. Creates a home. And he has been a great father. He's taught me, well, when I finally got to the point where I would listen, which was about 3 years ago. He's taught me so much. He really has taught me a lot. I was the smartest 18-year-old in the world. I just remember that. But I think that's what I would like to say to you guys more than anything else. As you honor him here tonight, and he becomes a part of this group, you don't, in my opinion, you're not only getting the greatest race car driver that ever sat in a stock car, you're getting quite possibly the greatest human being that I know in my life. So thank you guys for having us.
Don't you love that? I love hearing Kyle and the people talk from the heart, and that's exactly where that came from. Well, I will direct your attention to the screen right now as we honor Richard Petty.
For anybody that Richard in the sport, he's seen it all, and he was a part of it all. He was successful throughout that entire time. He showed all the drivers how to work with fans, how to treat everybody with respect.
masters of the sport, Richard Petty, scoring his 193rd career win. It would be something to be with him for number 200. No one has ever done it in the history of the game, won that many races in any form of motorsport, and he has just out-snookered him here in the 500.
Coming down the road straight, here they are, standing there, coming across the yellow line, just about to get him, but Petty had the lead. Richard Petty has won the 200th race of his incomparable Grand National NASCAR racing career.
His number is safe. It is absolutely amazing what he did in that period of time.
I'm gonna finish up this year. I'm gonna run every race there is next year. The deal is that it will be my last year next year, and it will be known as a fan appreciation tour. It's gonna be the name of the tour that we're gonna do. It's not a farewell tour because I'm not winning it. It's a fan appreciation tour.
He was a pioneer, and he's one of the greatest champions, if not the greatest champion this sport's ever seen.
Who is going to have the lead? They're side by side as they come down. Richard Petty is rolling.
It's the final race for a guy who started his career back in 1958 and has become the king of stock car racing.
Richard Petty's legacy will be that of excellence as a professional and as a man. I've won over 80 races, and I don't think I'm ever accomplishing what Richard has. That's what makes him the king.
Special thanks to NASCAR Productions for putting that excellent piece together. You also heard a lot of voices of my fellow colleagues over the years, folks like Ken Squire and Bob Jenkins, as they call those historic races for Richard Petty. This time I'd like to invite J.C. Argensinger and Bobby Rahal. Please come back to the stage. Gentlemen, if you would. You guys will come up here and we'll have you on either side of the trophy. And as you make your way up, folks, now it is time to meet our honored guest for the evening. He is arguably the most recognizable name in North American motorsports. He is the winningest driver in NASCAR history with 200 career victories. Included in that figure are 7 wins in the Super Bowl of stock car racing, the Daytona 500. He was the first and one of only 2 drivers to win NASCAR's premier, back then it was the Winston Cup, championship 7 times. He was the first motorsports athlete ever awarded the Medal of Freedom by the President of the United States. And in 2010, he was inducted into the very first class of the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Please join me in welcoming the undisputed king of stock car racing, Richard Petty. These 3 guys get around the trophy for a couple of photos. That's extra cereal, isn't it? This is the part I love the most. Get a chance to sit here and visit a little bit with you. You know, I want to turn back the clock a little bit. I want to go back for a This Is Your Life kind of segment. Born July 2nd, 1937. Lee and Elizabeth
Friday morning at 10:30.
10:30? You were early.
That's the reason I sleep late. I'm born late.
And ran your first race, as you heard Dale say, 16 days after your 21st birthday. NASCAR Rookie Year 1959. And the story that I like, and these people I've got to hear, was in Lakewood, Georgia in 1959. Richard Petty received a checkered flag for his first major NASCAR win. But there was a protest from another driver who said there was a scoring error. It needed to be corrected. They checked the scoring, and indeed that driver was right, and he was declared the winner. His name was Lee Petty. Your dad protested you in your first win?
Very first race. It was a 150-mile race on a dirt track, mile track. And it was real dusty, and, they didn't have any electronic stuff, everything done by hand. Got real dusty. I think the guy that was doing the flagging was on the outside of the track, and the scoring was on the inside. So they couldn't see each other. That's how dusty it was. And they finally got squared away, and we thought we'd won the race. 21-year-old kid, just, finish was great. But my dad come up and said, you didn't win the race, I did. But his logic was this. This was 1959, and there was very few 1959 cars running. I had a 57 Oldsmobile, and it paid $500 extra for a 59 car. So his reason was, hey, I need to win the race, so it's $500 more. So, okay, mom thought that was a good idea too.
You protested by your own dad. Well, you finally got that first win in 1960. And the headlines in the paper the next day read, Dick Petty wins at Columbia, and Mama was not happy.
My mother didn't like that. She told, I think we must have went to the next race or two or something. There was 3 or 4 guys that went to all the races and done all the put on the deal and got it in the paper and all that kind of stuff. Cause you didn't have that many reporters. But yeah. And so she got in the corner one day and said, look, his name is Richard. If I don't want him called Dick, I would have named him. So that was the end of the Dick Petty. It was always Richard Petty.
Well, your career took off in the early 60s, and we just referred to the fact 1967 was a year to remember. 48 starts, 27 wins, including 10 in a row. You did not lose a race from August 12th to October 1st that year. And the dominance that year earned you a new nickname. You had been called the Randleman Rocket, I've been told, and after dominating that season, you are now being called King Richard.
Well, if my name had been Joe, it would have been hard to say King Joe. Richard, it was an automatic deal. Dale always told me, come up and say, y'all won 27 races? Dale said, yeah, but we lost 21. That was his excuse on that. It was just a phenomenal year. Everything we done was right for that whole year, basically. We started off at Daytona, wasn't too good, but after Daytona, we went on one every other race, I guess. And it was one of the deals, and just like they were talking up here a while ago, I just drove the car. Okay, I got feedback to Dale and my brother building the engine, and I said, we need this or that. They done all the work. But then you had the pit crew, you had the sponsors. I was just a cog in the wheel, and even though that I was out front, okay, you know what I mean. I had to have somebody that wasn't necessarily the leader, but I was one out front, and so it was just kind of a deal that it took so many people. That if I stay here and talk to you all, how many millions of people it took to get me up here? I mean, you got Ford Motor Company out there. How many people did it take to make a product so that we could take and make it turn it into a race car? Or Smithfield, how many hogs did they have to kill to sponsor my race car? So it's not a one-man show. We just happen to be at the top of the little pyramid deal, and it just makes you feel good to go back and thank these people or see how many people made it work. Again, it's one of the deals, and very few people come along like me in the right time and the right circumstances. And, I was born to a mother and daddy was in the racing business. If he'd been in the hog business, I guess I'd been in the hog business. but he was in the racing business. Good Lord, give me a little bit of talent to drive the race car, and then put all the people around me to take me to the next level. And so couldn't have been in a better place, better time, under better circumstances. So, you know, everybody's not that lucky, and I just feel like I've been really lucky on that part. Just like I was talking about Victory Junction getting camp, you know, we were put in a position that people knew us and all that, so they wanted to build a camp. My grandson, Adam, who was killed in 2000, he was big deal with kids. He's a 19-year-old kid. But he'd been to Boggy Creek, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. Boggy Creek. And it was a Paul Newman camp. And he said, why can't we do something like this? It's a camp for chronically and seriously ill kids. They can't go to YMCA camp or church camp. So anyhow, when we lost him, Kyle and him got together and said, you know, let's do something in his memory. And so we went to NASCAR, we went to the tracks, we went to the sponsors, went to the fans, and they come through, and we got a camp down there that's 10 years old. We've seen 22,000 kids so far. They couldn't go to a regular camp. So sometimes I look back and say, you know, the good Lord had something for me to do, or for our crowd to do, and maybe that was part of it. We just went through the racing part to get to the part that he wanted us to get to. So it's just been a wonderful deal and all that.
You guys have done a wonderful job at Victory Junction and giving back. You know, when I was probably 7, or I don't want to make you feel old, when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, my grandparents took me to Hickory Speedway. And I walked down across the grandstands after the race, and there was the 42 car and the 43 car. It was a dirt track back then. And you stood behind that 43 car and you signed every single autograph until everybody had what they wanted. And you did that from the very beginning. And I don't know that, I mean, and to this day, I remember you taking young drivers that have come into sport and brought them over and sort of explained to them, that's how we do it. We give back. Where did that start, King? Where did you start that?
You know, I don't know. I guess I was so thrilled. And somebody come up in the first one, somebody said, you want your autograph? You want my autograph? It was a great deal. But you got to look back at the timing in 1958 and 59. There were no major sponsors. We didn't have, Ford Motor Company wasn't involved in the thing. You know, Smithfield wasn't in, but there was no sponsor. It was what the purse was. And the purse came out of those people sitting in the grandstand. So I learned early on that was what was being paid to me so that I could take the money home and feed the kids. And so it was just one of the deals where it says, every time I write Richard Petty, it says, thank you for being a race fan. And so, you know, you just got started with it and just continued to do it. And, you know, hopefully, that's one thing I think about the NASCAR drivers, maybe football players or baseball, basketball. They know that the people in the grandstand is really paying the bill.
We can't go through every major win. We'd be here for weeks, but 1979, the finish with David Pearson, you at Daytona was phenomenal. The 76. 76, yeah. 76. There you go. Yeah, I'm the one with the memory problem. Yeah, 1976. Yeah, no, I can't see it. I don't think he was nice. 1976, the finish with David was phenomenal. 79, there was a little issue on the backstretch with Donnie Allison and Cale, and you won the race, but not many people noticed.
Well, yeah, it's just one of the deals with like 20 seconds behind. Me and Darrell was racing, I think Fort might have been, anyhow, we was racing for third place. And we go up the backstretch, we're going to come off the second corner, caution lap. And back then, you ran back to the flag to see who won the race. And so we go turning down the backstretch, and I'm looking around, I'm watching Darrell in the mirror, look down there, and there's number 1 and 2 car, you know. So, ooh, you know, I got to get back to the start finish line. Instead of being third, I'm going to be first. We got back. And then we would come around, and when we come out of the third corner, the next thing, I said, thank you guys, we appreciate it. But it was a phenomenal race. If any of you remember, it was the first time CBS and anybody had flag to flag race at Daytona, and it snowed all up and down the East Coast that year. So he was either watching mud wrestling or marble shooting or the race. Everybody watching the race. So anyhow, it was just a phenomenal deal. It wound up being a phenomenal race, and we was fortunate enough. I looked at it. We won 7 races down there, 7 500s, and 2 or 3 of them we should have won. 2 or 3 of them we lucked into, but on the other hand, I lost 2 or 3 that I should have won. So over a period of time, I think it evened itself out.
Final one I want to mention, Richard, in terms of your driving career. July 4th, 1984, Daytona. I had the honor of being on the MRN broadcast that day, and it's a 160-lap race, Firecracker 400. Lap 158, it's you and Cale. The caution comes out, and you guys are going to race back and decide the win.
Well, yeah, the basic deal was we wound up getting a lap ahead of everybody, I think. And he said I had the best car. I said he had the best car. We was racing along here, and everybody, me and him both knew it was going to come down to the very last lap, down the back stretch, and who could get by and whatever. Well, just as we come across the start finish line, 58th lap or 59th, whenever, we seen a car down in the first corner, way up in there, and turned the thing over and stuff. So we knew it was going to be a caution flag to come out. So whoever made it back to the start finish line would win the race. And so we go turn along there, and we turn up the back stretch, and he passes me just as we go in the corner. And he didn't know this, but about 8 or 10 laps to go, I started slowing up. I was leading the race. So I just went off a little bit, or just didn't open it quite as wide open. First thing you know, we slowed down from, say, 195 mile an hour to 185 mile an hour. And he didn't realize that. So, but anyhow, when we did run wide open up the backstretch in the corner, he ran faster than what he thought he did. So he didn't stay in the groove. When he went in, he went up a groove. When he did, I just was able to turn 100. Anyhow, we ran side by side, beat on each other, and I beat him back to the start finish line by probably a couple of feet. And then when we came back around, he come down pit road. He thought the race was over, which he still had a lap to go. So as close as that race was, you see, this is the picture of it. That's how close the race was. When the race was over and they paid off, he's third. Because he come down pit road and somebody passed him, and he winds up third. After looking at that, how does anybody get in between those 1 and 2? So, but anyhow, just a freaky deal. It just blew his mind, and he lost it. Okay, I guess he lost the race, and he said, heck with it.
And that was your 200th victory, and for the first time ever, a sitting president of the United States was in attendance to celebrate the victory lane.
That was really a great deal. Before the race started, the president was on his way to Daytona. This is July the 4th, and he's running for re-election. And so he's on his way down, and he calls up and says, "Gentlemen, start your engines." At that time, there wasn't no ladies running. Okay, it was just all, anyhow, or women, whatever. Okay. Anyhow, so, we started the race, we ran on down the road, and we wound up winning the race. And then when it was over, I stopped on the start finish line, went upstairs, and he was up in the starter's booth. I think they let him narrate a couple of laps and stuff. So he used to be a narrator before he ever got in the movie business and all that. But and he just couldn't understand us running 200 mile an hour beating on each other. It just blew his mind. But it was just a phenomenal deal. I told him it was a great deal from our standpoint. It was July the 4th. We put him on the sports page, and he put us on the front page. So it was just a great deal.
And before we left the track that night, there was a stage, a small stage set up in the garage area, and I'll never forget this. They had tarps up so everyone couldn't see, but the president was going to come down and visit with the drivers one-on-one and the crew members and owners, and those of us at MRN and the CBS were there. And he walked up on the stage, and I remember Tammy Wynette standing there, and the President Reagan on one side, you on the other side, and she's saying, "Stand by your man," and you all three were singing.
Yeah, and was eating Kentucky Fried Chicken.
All right, let's bring this racing career down. In November 1992, you had mentioned the Fan Appreciation Tour, and it was going to be your last race. I was on the telecast that day. 160,000 people in Atlanta to watch your final start. There were 6 drivers battling for the championship that were mathematically going to win it that day. With 25 laps to go, you're caught in an accident and the car is on fire. It goes to the garage area, but somehow you come back out with 2 to go.
Well, the guys just said, this is your last race. They wanted at least finish. I mean, they want you to did not finish the last race. They worked on the car, put you ready, and took all the fenders off of it. And 3 or 4 laps to go, 2 or 3 laps to go around, run a couple laps. And, I told them, I said, everybody's always talked about going out in a blaze of glory. I just went out in a blaze.
When that race was over, an ESPN producer told a very young and frightened ESPN announcer, me, to interview the champion at the start finish line, Ella Kowicki. An amazing story there. And then when I finished the interview, he said, "Turn to your right," and we were feeding the house, and welcome for the final time to end his 35-year career, the King Richard Petty. You came out and made one final lap.
Yeah, we had to go sort of see what was going on. And it was just a phenomenal career. Okay, it got real emotional right after we had a wreck, and when we did, I got out of the car and the guys were working on, okay, here come Y and $3. And they all got up in the back of the truck, and we all cried on each other, done the whole deal, and about that time they come and said, "Hey, come and get your butt back in the car. We got it ready for you to go." So it was just one of those days that we burn in the empathy or whatever it is, what did
the day that live in infamy?
Yeah, I know it was something like that. You done good. You did get that right.
Well, I remember turning and I mentioned you were coming out, and the roar was deafening. The fans, no one had left because they wanted to see you make that final lap. And I was okay. I walked down pit road. You pulled down pit road, and I was fine until you climbed out of the car, and I saw the moisture in your eyes, and you started to speak, and your voice broke, and then I broke down, and so did you. But that moment of you saying goodbye. I mean, I know you thought about it for a year, but it still had to be very difficult.
Well, it changed my whole lifestyle from the standpoint that I always drove the car, and now I was not being able to do it. People don't understand my deal. Driving a race car was a hobby. I love to drive a race car. You work all week, you done everything you could, beg, borrow, and still get enough money to get to the racetrack, but you love to drive that race car. And so I give up my hobby that day. And after doing it for 33, 34 years, giving up a hobby. If you play golf, it's kind of tough to give it up. If you go fishing, hard to give it up. That was the same way for me. So the deal of just saying, okay, you've been doing this so long, what are you going to do now? And just giving up a hobby was really, really tough. And, it was one of them deals where I probably should have done it 4 or 5 years before that. But again, I just love to drive the car so much, it was just hard to get out of it. He knows what I'm talking about.
Well, the best part about the story is it has a happy ending. You didn't go anywhere. You said, "I'm not going away. It's not a farewell tour. It's an appreciation tour." And you stayed in the sport as the world's best ambassador for NASCAR stock car racing. You are a car owner. You are beloved by the drivers, the fans, anybody who comes to you, the sponsors, the media, because you have not changed one bit. I know before we do our final toast, you wanted to have a chance to say a few words to these people and to your sponsors and drivers people in your life that have meant so much.
You know, it's again, you can't say thank you enough. We was talking right there. You know, history is what's made me. If it wasn't for history, wouldn't nobody know about it. So when we go around with the organization here, everything that we can say, whether it's for racing or for your family or whatever, because stuff goes away, everything changes so quick, and so it's just an honor to be involved in being this deal. And I told them, I said, you know, why did you choose me? They said, one of you oldest guys still walking there with you, so you have more history than anybody. So it's a perfect situation from that standpoint. And I just want to say, everybody that's involved in this particular project and stuff, thank you for allowing me to come here. Thank you for honoring me, and good luck. If there's anything we can do to help you go further forward, we'll definitely do that. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a tradition that you raise your glasses, and I will hand the king a glass, and you will raise our glasses and toast the all-time greatest. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We'll get the good stuff here. We got the real stuff. The undisputed king of NASCAR stock car racing, Richard Petty.
Everybody have a super weekend. Thank you all.
Well, hang on before you go anywhere. We still got a little bit to go. We're going to let Richard stay up here. Richard, if you want to have a seat there, we got a couple extra pieces of business, which is part you're going to like, folks. We got some things to auction off here, which are one-of-a-kind items. And before we do that, let's bring up a gentleman who created the one-of-a-kind painting you see behind me. Please welcome Randy Owens. Randy, come on up.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody that thought it was a good idea that I be involved this year and contributing something to honor this great man. It occurred to me sometime during this project that this really was a great moment. That, you know, I've been painting race cars and race car drivers for almost 40 years, and it wasn't lost on me that this moment and capturing this image was one of the greatest moments in motor racing history that I've been able to deal with. So I just want to thank everybody. I feel honored, and thanks for having me here.
Thank you, Randy.
I just want to say one other thing. That this is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you very much, Randy. So, folks, this is a one-of-a-kind painting, and this is the start-finish line coming to the caution flag with 2 laps to go, and that is the margin for Richard Petty to get his 200th career victory.
Can I say one other thing?
Sure, absolutely.
That this light has washed this thing out completely. Now, it is much brighter than it looks. I don't know if I can turn it around a little bit and look at it, but it's all, the resolution is much brighter than it looks. It's all out of focus. And this is called a gallery wrap canvas. So you see on all 5 sides, it's painted. So that there's actually a hint of the A after the Daytona on it is painted on the top, the bottom, the sides, and everything. So it's brighter than it looks up here. Anyway.
So we're going to begin the auction here now. We're going to go pretty quickly. Again, it's a one-of-a-kind. We're going to begin the bidding at $2,500, okay? $2,500 here. We go to 25. Got 25 right here. $2,750. $2,750. $3,000. $3,000 right here. $3,000. Well, here $3,500. $3,500. Going for a great cause. $3,500. Thank you very much. $3,500. Again, one-of-a-kind. None that are like it. $3,500 so far. Right here, 4. Let's go 4. $4,000. $4,000. $4,000 back here. Thank you. $4,000. Money going for a worthwhile cause. to be able to support this amazing museum. $4,000, $4,000, how about $4,500? $4,500, $4,500, $4,500. Thank you so much, thank you. Now, I will say this. A year ago, we had a painting that was being donated. It was an incredible picture of the Chip Ganassi artwork. And as we began the bidding, several of Chip's drivers, hint, hint, began to bid. They felt like it was a good idea to begin the bid. And one of the drivers, one of the young guys who won the bid, once he won that bid, the rest of the year he had a phenomenal season. So, with that said, we are at 4,500. Let's hear 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000. We're at 5,000. Yeah, what's that?
Ask if I can have a raise.
A raise. Well, here, we have 4,500, we got 5,000. Let's go 5,000, $5,000. Come on, 5,000. 4,500 won once. How about 4,750? How about 4,750? We got a 4,750 out here. One-of-a-kind painting.
Mention that Richard will sign it also.
Richard is going to autograph this, so you'll have a one-of-a-kind with the King's autograph on this canvas. We have 4,500, 4,500 going once, 4,500 going twice. Any other bids? Sold $4,500. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. One more item. One more item we didn't expect to have. Richard brought this himself, and that is the hat that Richard Petty is donating. And Richard has a few of these made each year that are made specifically for him. Richard, you want to tell them about the hat?
Man, it's just a Charlie One Horse. I think what we do, I've been doing this since 60, 79, 80. Kyle used to run a hat place down our Western place, and a guy come out and give him one time, and the first thing you know, I wound up with a bunch of hats. What we do,
Yes, I was a hat maker.
yeah. Anyhow, I worked for 3 or 4 months, and then we'll sign them, and we'll give them away for different fundraisers and stuff. So this is one I wore about 6 months or a year, whatever it is. Anyhow, I wear them, and so we got a plastic deal in it, and so inside it's a Charlie One Horse. It says made specially for Richard Petty and a Richard Petty version. So let's see what we get for this thing. Well, he's gonna try it. We got it going now.
No, I know you guys are from up here, but you understand that the word deal encompasses a multitude of things. Okay? So that would translate for everything he said tonight. The word deal means a lot of things. Now, he has worn this hat for about 6 months or a year, so it needs to stay inside this for a while. Okay? Just be sure y'all understand that before anybody buys the deal.
All right. Well, here's the deal. We're going to start the bidding. All right, who wants to start it out? Let's do $500 to start. $500, $500. Hey, thank you. $500 for this hat that the King has worn and will stay sealed for a while. It is autographed inside that. And if you buy it, Richard said he's even promised to tell you how fast that bird was going when he hit that hat. But it is a collector's item. $500. We have $750. $750, okay? Bobby Ray, all $750. Thank you very much. $750. How about $1,000? $1,000. What a great donation for this cause. $1,000 for the hat. Richard, you got something you wanted to say?
Yeah, everybody needs a hat, but look, this is a good trade. If you donate so much money, we'll give you a hat. Okay, that's what this deal is. So let's get up off of it and see what we do. I think the most we ever got out of one was $21,000. So y'all got a long dang way to go there.
So you want to ask for 20? Let's just go 1,500 to start. How about that? 15. We're at 1,000. Let's go 1,500. 1,500. Yes, sir. $1,500 for the hat. Thank you so much. 1,500. About 1,750. 1,750 for the hat. 1,750 for the hat. Autographed hat worn by the King, Richard Petty. And when maybe he can $17.50. Thank you very, very much. And maybe he'll get another one for you in Victory Lane this Sunday in Watkins Glen. So $17.50?
If you don't like that one, I'll trade, and you can have this one. Okay, either one, either way you want.
I'm good at giving you the hammer off his head. So it's $17.50 for Richard Petty hat. Can we get an even $2,000? $2,000. Thank you very much. $2,000. King?
Sounds good. Anybody can do, somebody could go 2,100, you know.
2,100 right here, 2,100 right here. How about 2,200, 2,200, 2,200, 2,200 back here. 23, 23, 23, we're moving now, 2,300, 2,500, 2,500 right here. Either that.
You're looking good, keep coming, let's go.
Here we go, guys, here we go, 2,500, 26, 26, 26, 26.
We've got some awful quiet tables back there for some reason.
Was that a fly back there or someone did? Okay. 20, we got 26, about 27. 27. 27. Let's just get to 3,000 to make it even, okay? Let's go. 3,000 for Bobby Rahal. How good is that? Thank you, Bobby. $3,000. Okay, anybody else?
That'll work. Amen.
That'll work, okay. $3,000 going once. 3,500. 3,500. Uh-oh. Coming from Watkins Glen. Michael Prell, thank you. Okay, 3,500. Anybody else?
Come on, Scotty.
$4,000 for Bobby Rahal. Hey, I like this. This is going good. Okay, this is going a little well. This is how you do your sponsor negotiations.
All right, where you at?
He's at 4,000. He's at 4,000. He's at 4,000. $4,000. 4,000. Are we here? 4,500. 4,250. 4,000 going once.
Here you go. 4,300 okay, that's 43.
It's 45?
It's 4,000, we're trying to go 45.
All right, 45, but he buys the other one on your head for 4.
For 4?
I got a case.
Do what?
You got the case.
Okay,
I'm
who's
giving the case.
okay.
All right, okay, here's the deal, 4,500.
245.
Two hats for 4,500?
No.
Each. Each, 4,500. So 2 hats for a total of $9,000.
Right.
We're good.
And one box.
And one box. All right, here we go. How's that? 2 hats for $9,000 plus a box.
Right.
So, thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and be sure to go by and pick up your silent auction items, and there are goodie bags on the way out. Once again, how about a nice round of applause, our special guest of the evening, Richard Petty.